So hello and welcome to another Valorant video. Today we are going to be looking a bit of a meta review, I guess, in all, and compare the VCT 2022 Stage 1 agent pick rates to the champions pick rates. Now this is quite interesting for a couple of reasons. One, some things have changed. We do have the introduction of Chamber, and so we need to see what Chamber has actually done, what agents are being, substituted out for Chamber, if there is any big difference. And also, of course, in this VCT qualifier, open qualifier events, we have a lot more variety in terms of the actual semi-pro teams. There's a lot more variety probably in terms of what people are thinking. So it's probably, more of a diverse meta in general on this. And I was watching a stream yesterday of a couple, I think it was FPX's coach and Fnatic's coach, and they were talking about how they actually think that the meta right now is in a pretty good spot and pretty, there's a lot of variety going around. I would argue that Jett is kind of, the one big asterisk around that, and maybe Sova would be in there too, for not being quite true. But I do think that there is enough going on that it does keep things pretty interesting. So with that said, let's dive in and take a look at the numbers. Well, here we have Jett and Sova and Astra, and then Viper are our top three most picked, and that of course represents the same thing here from the Champions tournament. Jett has actually gone down a good 4% there, which I thought was quite interesting, but it's probably more to do with just general comfort, for like, the semi-pro teams or whatever. If you're more comfortable on a Reyna instead of a Jett, then maybe you'll play Reyna instead of a Jett, right? So that probably explains that. Sova has actually gone up. So it seems like people are embracing Sova even more. And of course, the maps here will take something into account, right? Like, depending on what maps. I doubt we got a lot of Fracture. Obviously, I don't have the results of every game, but I doubt we got a lot of Fracture from this as a whole. And I bet there was a lot of, the typical maps, the Iceboxes, the Havens, the Ascents that people like to play. So yeah, I'm going to guess that will have something to do with it as well. Astra and Viper 59, 58, 56, and 51. So a slight decrease. Again, this is probably a comfort thing where, some people will just be more comfortable on Brimstone and on Omen. So maybe that's what they went for instead. But obviously the top level, Astra and Viper will be dominant. Sky and Killjoy at 43%. We can see Sky has gone down 10 points and Killjoy has gone down 9 points herself. So quite a big reduction for these two agents, which I thought was pretty interesting, because Sky is another agent that I would have thought that people just kind of knew how to play, that one person would just kind of know how to play. So I actually would have expected maybe an increase. But it seems that Sova perhaps ate into Sky a bit. We'll come back to Killjoy. Sage at 28%, and Cypher at 27. So Cypher pretty much the same, but Sage a big jump as well. Sage getting a lot more play. Again, maybe a more simplistic agent. Just leads to, higher pick rate in general. Then we have Breach at 23 and Reyna at 23. So we could see Reyna at 19, not too far off. Breach at 21, not too far off. Pretty similar, about what you would expect. Raze and KO at 20 and 18. Raze at 23, KO at 18. So about the same. So those two looking, pretty solidified. And then Brim at 4, Omen at 2, Phoenix and Yoro at 0. Yoro had one game, I think. At Phoenix, you can see a bit here. And I think that Brim and Omen are slightly above where they were in terms of the Valorant champions. But again, that will probably just be the comfort, easier characters. Again, I know we're talking about still a pretty high level, but it's not the very top level, so you can probably still feel like you can get away with those things. And of course we have the introduction of Chamber, who's sitting at 12.72%, and this is probably obviously eating into Killjoy somewhat. That can explain Killjoy's demise somewhat, and maybe some other agents as well, like Sky, I don't know, maybe was being replaced by Chamber. It seems a bit odd, but perhaps that was the case. Chamber is, of course, a very unique character in general, so it's kind of interesting to see who Chamber ends up replacing. It does seem like there are some potentials there with the Killjoy, and it could be Sky as well. But quickly, let's talk about Chamber, because personally, I haven't seen many of the top teams, the teams that you would expect to be doing pretty well. We haven't seen too much Chamber, to be honest. Vitality did run Chamber quite a few times. I actually made a video about that you can go and check out. But yeah, for the most part, we haven't seen too much Chamber from the very top teams. Obviously, I haven't been keeping track of like every single team and who's been running Chamber a lot. But we haven't seen it as much as I think we perhaps expected. Or at least I expected, and I know that I've heard others say a similar thing. And so why is that? Well, we saw it with KO as well. The KO didn't really get picked that often early on either. And even going back to Astra, we actually saw it with Astra as well, even though Astra, we all know now, was completely busted. And really, the teams that performed best in sort of that, it was around the Iceland tournament. The teams that were performing best were the ones that realized that Astra was completely crazy and were just picking Astra. Whoever mastered Astra seemed to do pretty well in that tournament. So it can take people time, right? It can definitely take people time to get onto these agents and, learn how to play them. And they're going to pick something that they're comfortable with. Even if overall they think something might be better, they're going to take the time to get comfortable with that other thing in the meantime. And whilst they're playing, they're going to go with what they're comfortable with now and know how to play right now, rather than going for something a bit more experimental that might long term be better, but right now might not be as good because you don't fully know how to play the agent. That probably is what is happening, but I'm still a bit surprised that we haven't seen as much Chamber, because I don't think Chamber is the most complex character. Like Astra, I can understand that Astra is a pretty complex character that needed some figuring out. KO, I can sort of get, and KO obviously did need a buff as well. You might feel like you have to have good knife locations and things like that. With Chamber, it feels like a lot of it is just, you know, put down your bots where you would put down a killjoy bot, a cipher trip. It's not rocket science, right? So I am a bit surprised because I don't think it would take too long to learn Chamber. Like good teleport spots as well, I don't think is the craziest thing, particularly on defense. I get on attack. That's probably where these things are going a bit askew, and teams might not feel as comfortable as what they want to do with Chamber on the attacking side. But I think just watching that Vitality game of Sender, he showed us what Chamber can do and how to play, I think, Chamber on attack. And so if I was a team, I'd just be looking at that and being like, yeah, that's probably how you use Chamber on attack. You use him as kind of a pressure tool, someone who can get out, someone who can, if you want to rotate, he can stay there and then, join the rotation a bit later on because he can do it very quickly. All those things I think you can do with Chamber on attack. And 12, I mean, don't get me wrong, 12 is not a terrible number here, closer to 13%. It's not like an abysmal number, and I do expect that to rise, but I think what surprised me is that, when I've been watching Breeze or Icebox, maps that I really thought Chamber would, straight away be like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense to play Chamber on these maps. We haven't really seen that much Chamber, and that is a bit surprising to me, but I think in time we will start to get there with Chamber. I wouldn't be shocked at all.